for a star like Caitlin Clark, although we felt like it would be a good fit, especially with her Midwest roots and her core fan base being there. But they've mishandled it to the point where it doesn't matter. Her fans aren't even showing up to games anymore. You see the agendas that they're putting out with the games. Her fans don't really aren't into all of that. They are into basketball and being entertained in that way. And I think you laid it out beautifully, man. The Indiana Fever have done everything they can to show that they.
A sports talk segment featured commentators discussing a theory that the Indiana Fever's handling of Caitlin Clark has been mismanaged to the point where a trade, potentially to the Los Angeles Sparks, could eventually happen. One commentator argued that the Fever's front office has operated unprofessionally, comparing it to a small family-run business rather than a well-organized professional sports franchise. He suggested the organization has structured its roster and coaching decisions around Stephenie White and Kelsey Mitchell, rather than fully building around Clark, pointing to the drafting of Raven Johnson as one example.
To show that they want to build this team around Stephenie White and Kelsey Mitchell. That's why you go and draft a Raven Johnson in the first round. And this team was built to survive and be better without Caitlin. Meanwhile, Jason and I have been saying the job here is to win with Caitlin Clark. They clearly have set it up for otherwise. I would welcome this change to Los Angeles because I think LA is built for stars.
He said he would welcome a move to Los Angeles, arguing the market is better suited to showcase a star of Clark's caliber, and referenced a broader belief that NBA teams should have been able to strategically place top draft prospects in bigger media markets to help grow the league. Discussion turned to a potential trade package, floating the idea of Clark joining a roster that already includes Kate Martin and Cameron Brink, while speculating Indiana might request players such as Kelsey Plum in return. One commentator questioned whether Plum, who has shown a preference for being a primary scoring option, would mesh well next to Clark, while another suggested she could adapt the way she previously played alongside Chelsea Gray in Las Vegas.
To Los Angeles because I think LA is built for stars. And you know what's interesting, Jason? I said before Caitlin Clark was drafted, and this is while the WNBA is still in the depths of hell with no one watching, I said, you know what? If I was in control of the WNBA, there wouldn't be no draft order. I'm placing the stars strategically where it's going to benefit the league. Okay, I would have put Caitlin Clark in New York City somewhere. Juju Watkins, I would have forced her to be.
The panel discussed the Sparks' roster construction, mentioning players like Nneka Ogwumike, Diarika Hamby, and Azura
Caitlin Clark in New York City somewhere. Juju Watkins, I would have forced her to be in LA. I would have put Angel Reese in Atlanta. All the Black Hollywood down there would rally around her. I would place the stars strategically. Because at the end of the day, you got to build this league up. That game last night was atrocious to watch. And if that is the product we're going to be getting, I don't know, Jason. I don't know. I might have to start covering MMA fighting. I don't know. I have to figure something out. I'm going to have to figure something out.
Charles.
Another commentator pushed back initially, noting White has historically had success getting less heralded rosters to overperform, but ultimately said he had come around to viewing some decisions, including inconsistent defensive schemes, as difficult to otherwise explain. Commentators also discussed a specific game against the Atlanta Dream, praising Indiana's second-half defensive trapping scheme in the corners as effective, and criticizing Atlanta's stars for appearing unprepared and low energy that night, while debating whether that was simply a product of a young team getting caught off guard by a schedule that doesn't allow extensive game planning.
I'm going to have to figure something out.
Charles, pick up wherever you want, but I want you to somewhat address, because I didn't fully finish my point on Corey Close. But she's 54 years old, and after winning that national championship, she talked at the Final Four about, like, hey, man, with this NIL and all, I'm not having any fun. This is wearing me out. And a lot of college coaches feel like the chaos in college sports is.
Another panelist noted that team communication around her recovery timeline felt limited throughout the season, with most updates coming through official team statements rather than direct interviews. and referenced reporting from a since-departed reporter who had disclosed additional injury details not previously confirmed by the team. It was also noted that Clark continued making public appearances, including autograph signings, during the period in question, which one commentator suggested may have helped sustain ticket sales, even as her playing status remained uncertain. The segment closed with a commentator suggesting the presence of players with prior ties to Clark, such as Erica Wheeler, on the Sparks roster, added to his belief that a move to Los Angeles could be in her future, describing it as a long-developing storyline tied to Clark's rise in popularity and the league's broader business interests.
Us in college sports is too much, and that's why I think this Corey Close could end up the LA Sparks head coach, is because she's at an age, she proved her point, she won a national championship. Why not move on to the WNBA? Charles, your thoughts on my theory and that?
Well, first of all, yesterday when we had the conversation about Caitlin Clark.
Hold on, we're picking up an echo with Charles. Is there any way to fix that, Luke? Go ahead and talk again.
A separate short segment addressed comments from Sophie Cunningham about a team meeting meant to resolve internal differences, with a commentator suggesting the team lacks strong internal leadership and organizational structure. The discussion opened around whether Iowa was truly the right proving ground to prepare Caitlin Clark for the WNBA.
And talk again.
Is it better now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Well, first of all, when we spoke yesterday, you had me at an unfair advantage. I wasn't aware of the podcast you was listening to with 130 people on it when they was setting the stage. but I will say this, if it's unfathomable that the Dallas Mavericks would trade Luka Doncic to LA, and you talk about Shaq and all these other people going to LA, let me give you one better. And that argument you made about them.
One panelist strongly disagreed with that premise, arguing Clark carried real pressure at Iowa to perform every night for her team, unlike other star college players who could have an off night scoring-wise and still win comfortably. Clark, by contrast, had to consistently deliver at a high level every game.
And that argument you made about them trading Caitlin Clark, be honest with you, I laughed at that when I got off the phone. When you started speaking this morning, I thought, he's on to something when you said LA. And here's why. As big as Caitlin Clark is, it doesn't compare to how big Wayne Gretzky was in Canada. And the Edmonton Oilers shipped him to LA because it was better for the NHL. So if hockey can take Canada's biggest asset...
That same panelist then pivoted to accusing the show's producers of selectively ignoring Clark's on-court performances. Over a 10-show stretch, during which Clark reportedly averaged around 29 points and 9 assists, not a single highlight from those games aired on the platform.
Basketball highlights again. This is incredible. This is actually incredible. Virgil, check this out. It's August 3rd. July 17th, it's been 10 shows, I counted myself, during a 10-show stretch in which Caitlin Clark averaged 29 points and 9 assists. Not a single highlight was played on this platform. It's insanity, and the point is proven over and over again. You would think.
Even after posting a 45-point double-double, a feat unprecedented in league history, the show's focus shifted instead to a storyline about Sophie Cunningham's rising popularity rather than Clark's performance. Similarly, after a 26 or 27-point, 11-assist showing, there was no coverage of that double-double either.
Virgil, after a 45-point double-double, something that's never been done in league history, we'd actually talk basketball. We didn't talk about it at all. You know what they wanted to talk about? Is Sophie Cunningham becoming as popular as a star as Caitlin Clark? You would think after a 27-point, 11-assist game, we would talk about the 27-point double-double. Virgil, I didn't even get invited on the dang show the next day. It's insanity. It doesn't stop there, guys.
The panelist further pointed to a 32-point, assist-heavy performance that went uncovered, while the show instead focused on fan signage in the stands and other sideline moments. The one time in over 3 weeks that Clark had what was considered an off night, 19 points, 10 assists, and arguably being the fourth best guard on the floor that game, was reportedly the only time a highlight from her games aired at all.
Jason is incredible. Hadley, I feel like you have something to do with this. I'm going to call you after the show. A 32.7 assist game. You know what we talked about, Virgil? We talked about 12 people putting up signs for Sophie Cunningham. We talked about signs in the stands. We talked about an old overweight lady sitting in the front row as a plant. We never talk about the 32 points. Ironically, the one time in over 3 weeks where she has 19 points.
The panelist argued that during a stretch where Clark shot around 55% from the field, 46% from three, and 90% from the free throw line, the coverage stayed silent, only shifting to discuss basketball once she had a rough third quarter against Atlanta. Another panelist chimed in, joking that the earlier commentary was now labeling Clark's situation as being homeschooled, a term used earlier in the conversation.
One time in over 3 weeks where she has 19 points and 10 assists. And I agree, she was the fourth best guard on the court in that game. I'm not refuting that. But the one time you feel like she didn't meet the bill is the only time a highlight ever gets played on the show. It's been 10 shows where the girl averaged 30 and 10. Oh, because I know Dre, he used to talk about percentages because, they pulled this little trick on me with the Atlanta Dream third quarter. They waited until one bad third quarter to actually talk about basketball on this show.
One panelist pointed to inconsistency in how free throw attempts were discussed, noting that a comment was made about Clark shooting too many free throws in one game, while another star player who had a 36-point night on 14 free throw attempts the very next day received no similar scrutiny, arguing the standards applied seemed to shift depending on the player. Brought in to weigh in as something of a neutral voice, another panelist offered a broader framework, invoking the idea of being homeschooled athletically, meaning some players rarely face real adversity because opponents or teammates go easy on them, only to discover under real pressure whether they're genuinely battle-tested.
Until one bad third quarter to actually talk about basketball on this show. Until then, they wanted to talk about refs, texts, tauntings, everything else while she was averaging 27 and 7. This is what they do. This is like a rerun.
Right.
Dre, during this 29.9 assist stretch, the girl was shooting 55 from the floor, 46 from three, 90% from the free throw line. They refused to talk about it. All of a sudden, she's homeschooled because she had 19 and 10.
Now it's homeschool, Maurice. Now it's homeschool.
It's insanity. Jason Whitlock. I knew Whitlock.
He explained that facing consistently strong competition typically forces players to evaluate and elevate their game, using Kobe Bryant's career as an example, noting how his father intentionally guided him toward programs where he'd be pushed as the primary option, specifically to avoid repeating patterns from his own playing career. That process, the panelist argued, ultimately prepared Bryant for the jump to the NBA.
Insanity. Jason Whitlock. I knew Whitlock was up to something. I called him yesterday. He refused to answer my call. I knew he was up to no good. I knew it.
That is gaslighting in the highest form, what you just did right there. That is mind-boggling how you just did that. I knew at some point today that you was going to go to Paige Beckers. I didn't know it was going to be your opening statement.
No, Charles. Hey, remember, because this didn't make the show, because this was over the weekend. When
he then made the broader point that, regardless of fan sentiment on either side, what ultimately matters in sports is on-court performance, and how Clark personally responds to criticism and challenges will define her development, not outside noise. Fans rationalizing losses is nothing new, comparing it to fan bases around other legendary players throughout history.
Hey, remember, because this didn't make the show, because this was over the weekend. When Caitlin Clark was scoring 32, Jason Whitlock texted the chat. Oh man, all of these free throws. It's just too many free throws. Asia Wilson had 36 yesterday on 14 free throws. Nobody says a word about her free throw. It's just, Virgil, the goalpost gets moved every single time.
I'm going to bring Dre in as an arbitrator here. Dre, your thoughts on any of this?
On any of this? Well, first of all, I agree with Virgil with what he said.
Another panelist pushed back slightly, noting that in the current social media era, athletes are more exposed to outside noise than in past generations, when player evaluation relied more heavily on coaches and beat reporters, rather than a constant stream of online commentary. He expressed concern about a dynamic where a segment of very supportive fans reflexively frame every criticism as unfair, potentially shielding Clark from constructive feedback she could benefit from. while clarifying he considers himself a genuine fan who wants her to succeed and is simply trying to offer balanced perspective.
Any of this?
On any of this? Well, first of all, I agree with Virgil with what he said when it comes to being on the homeschool, quote unquote, not theoretically, but the metaphor of being homeschooled, because there are athletes out there who never had to get into a fight because everybody wants to be their friend. It's only when they get into a situation with someone who doesn't want to be their friend, they find out that just because everybody else left them alone doesn't mean that they're necessarily tough. Many school kids, they go to school, not homeschooled, but they never face a real challenge from anyone until they get to a certain point. Then the fact that
The neutral panelist responded that regardless of fan noise on either side, real growth depends on which voices Clark chooses to internalize. The healthiest approach being to tune out outside commentary entirely and focus purely on performance, using an old advertising analogy about blocking out surrounding noise before competing. One panelist pushed back on being accused of hate-watching Clark's games while still claiming to be a fan, comparing that critique to activist groups pressuring public figures to make statements on specific topics.